This is Track Talk returning with commentary on a game of 18 mechs. I have to disclose that this is a game that I personally struggle with, just from an enjoyment perspective. It has several features that I don't enjoy, including a fixed or restriction on train buys in the early game, and also just a lot of kind of gotcha rules that differ from 1830 and other less rules heavy games. But this game in particular I wanted to bring to the channel because it gets extremely chaotic and I was just cracking up in the later stages of the game. So I think it'll be fun to run through. With that said, HGL will start the auction and bids on the Mexican International. This is the company that comes with a share of the Chihuahua, which is generally a pretty strong company throughout the game. So a usually fairly highly valued private. Drath will pull immediately here, just buying the cheap private, and my fear when players do this is that the other players will say, well, if the first private was a good value, I'm just going to buy the private right after it, and we'll just see the entire auction just unravel. But that actually does not happen here, and Flin will bid for the Mexican National. This is the company that comes with the President's Cert of the NDM. The NDM is a special company in this game, as it cannot be parred until a certain number of 3 trains have been bought, and also has the ability to absorb a otherwise a different company. There are some restrictions on that which will become relevant later in the game. Bad Company will be joining HGL on the Mexican International, and Drath will be also bidding on the Mexican International, so there'll be a fight over the NDM. Flin is building on one of the minor companies. The 3 intermediate privates all have a company that is associated with them that will lay some track and then pay out and withhold in a 50-50 distribution before they are absorbed by a company. The other minor company is now being bid on, and finally all 3 have bids. People are just filling in on the first minor. The A minor starts over here on the east coast of Mexico in pretty close proximity to Mexico City, has some synergy potentially with the TM or even the MC in terms of getting them track that could be friendly to get into Mexico City. The intermediate minor company now has 2 bids on it, and we see the ripcord pulled. HGL buys the KCMO, and this is a company that synergizes fairly well with the Chihuahua, which is what he is hoping to leave the auction with. Now we see the miners going up for auction, and they are willing to bid this up a little bit further even. And we will see the other miners now being distributed. All the miners are now gone, and the last 2 privates, some of the more interesting, I would say, privates in the auction, are now on the auction block. HGL and Bad Company end up going all the way to max value for this private, and it's, well, not technically max value, but you can only buy it in for 150, so going much higher than that starts becoming problematic. The Mexican National now goes up, and we see Flin immediately drop, leaving it between Drath and HGL, and HGL ultimately wins and will par this for the max value of 90. This gives Drath priority in the first stock round, and he will take the FCP. The FCP is operating in the northernmost corner of the map, so it does have the potential for some lucrative runs in the beginning of the game, but oftentimes has trouble developing track and getting towards the revenue centers in the south. It's also a company that cannot be merged into the NDM. It's sometimes worthwhile merging your company into the NDM if you're going to be on the hook for a expensive train and would just like to offload that responsibility. Flin now does have money to par. You only need 300 to par in this game, and we'll take the TM. TM starts on the east side of the map and does have the potential to get into Mexico City fairly early, but will be in competition with the MC. The MC is the next company to float and will be parred beneath the TM. The TM actually is not going to float in this round as FlimFlon parred it too high for him to float on his own. So the MC will have a track advantage on the TM. HGL does not have enough money to float and will be waiting for the other players to take their actions. FlimFlon now hoping for another player to help him float his company, and does not appear to be getting that help. Bad Company is the last player to float his company, which means that HGL will be leaving with priority for the next stock round. The minor companies will operate, and their first operation is a little bit lackluster as they lack the cash to lay track. So they will all just run for 30 and half pay, half withhold. FCP is the first player-owned company to operate and will lay some very expensive track in order to get his runs, but does have 2 potential runs already. Unfortunately, in 18 mechs, you can only buy 1 2-train in each OR, so will not be running 2 trains in the next OR. This is a major feature of the game that I do not like, but that is just my personal preference. MC now laying track and will be, looks like, rushing towards Mexico City, or at least Querétaro, and also buys a single 2-train. HGL now may be feeling more comfortable in investing in these companies now that he knows a little bit more about how they're going to be running, and it looks like he will start buying some shares. FlimFlon still, unfortunately, has inadequate cash to float and will be just sitting on his private revenue. HDL has floated up MC and not bought any shares in any other company. This will give Drath priority into the next stock round. Again, the privates will be operating, but they still don't have the $20 for track lay, so we'll just be running on their tile. The yellow company now will continue building south, looking to get another city in its run, and will be running its 2-train. And we see it buy yet another 2-train. MC continuing on its path toward Mexico City, and will drop an important token on Querétaro. This tile is pretty important. It oftentimes helps dictate control of who has access to Mexico City, which is the kind of revenue center of the game. And he buys another 2-train as well, so only 2 left in the bank. Drath sitting on $70, which is not enough to buy any shares in any of the companies right now, so we'll be forced to pass. FlimFlon also cannot do anything, and Bad Company does have the option to dump here, but wouldn't really be that devastating to HGL. Would just give him 2 2-trains to run, so we'll expect him to see him pass as well. HGL does decide to sell out of the MC, has money now to float his own company, and he elects to take the mechs. So the mechs is starting down here in the south and has basically a guaranteed route into Mexico City, but may not be able to get a token there, depending on how the companies value the operating order. Draft will buy an MC. Cheap shares, just getting a paying share so that he can hopefully float his... Oh, actually, no, sorry. Wrong player. I was thinking of FlimFlon. FlimFlon will pass. He could have bought a paying MC share there, but elects to just wait it out. And now the Mex is floated. So going into the next stock round, Drath will maintain priority. The privates, or the miners, will now operate, and they now have enough cash to do something interesting. The A company elects not to lay track, and B will, I believe, lay track, yes, and run and pay out half and half. FlimFlon operating the C also lays track. This track could potentially help the UDY down the road, but the UDY typically floats kind of late, so may not be a valuable company in the end. FCP has 2 trains, will lay the next city, and does not lay the expensive $120 track, but will be able to run both of his routes now. The MEX first operation, and will be running from Veracruz and links immediately up with Mexico City. Can only buy one of the 2 trains, and leaving the MC to operate last. We'll be looking to link up with Chihuahua and running its 2 trains. It's interesting in this game how the 2 trains, or any train really, runs through the DITs for free, so you get a lot more money from these trains than you sometimes would expect. It also means that DITs are not something to avoid like they are in 1830. MC does not buy a train, and we will see Drath with first action in the stock round. He helps Flimflon float. Flimflon would have been able to do that anyway. He now has the capital, and Flimflon does buy a TM even though it's not necessary to float. Bad Company with a fair amount of money is going to buy an FCP share. This is a paying share. He gets a little bit of value converting from IPO to market. And HDL buys a cheap MC share. And we'll see them pass into the next operating round. The HDL will be going with priority into this next stock round. Again, the minor companies will operate, and this time A does elect to lay some track. A is owned by Flimflon, who's operating the TM, so now has a little bit more motivation to lay track, which will be eventually helpful for the TM company. B lays another track, and C doesn't have track to lay as we're not in green. FCP operates next, and because there is no green track, still bypasses that expensive tile and just runs his 2 trains. TM's first operation could see it laying down to Tampico to cooperate with the A minor, but also would not be unreasonable to head up to San Antonio, which has a higher revenue. Looks like that's what he will be doing, kind of splitting the difference. We'll be buying the last 2 train here, and leaving Mex to buy into the green trains. Mex doesn't have any track it can lay, and we'll be buying the first 3. And also buys in his private. The KCMO is able to lay the Copper Canyon tile, so it has some potential synergy with the Chihuahua. Chihuahua, of note, is oftentimes floated fairly early as a result of the shares that come out in the private auction, but in this particular game has not been floated. And HGL has priority, so maybe looking to get in on the Chihuahua. MC now has access to green tiles and will immediately upgrade Quotero and be able to increase his revenue as a result. May also be looking to buy in privates here. Buys a 3 and then his private. Of note, he did pay $150 for this private, so while he got a little bit of revenue from it, he wasn't able to increase his net worth very much by buying it in. HGL is starting with priority, sells down the MC, and also sells down his own company of the Mex, so maybe not too worried about it getting stolen, and will be parring the Chihuahua. Drath happy to jump on board, and as a result of the auction, 1 share has already been bought, so it only needs 1 share more to float. Bad Company will buy paying shares and then tank that stock for just a quick $20 bonus. And the Chihuahua is now floated. Bad Company has money to float a company of his own, and it looks like he will be floating the SPM. SPM oftentimes is a later float and starts quite close to Mexico City as well, so maybe rushing over to Querétaro in order to get the second token on that city. There is only one three-hole city in the whole game, so these tokens on Quartero are quite important. HGL has floated his company, continues to buy into it, and it looks like Bad Company will continue to float the SPM. HGL is now maxed out, and Bad Company just continues to float. This will leave HGL with priority going into the next stock round. The miners continue to operate. They will be closing quite soon. They close when the fifth 3 is bought, so hopefully we'll be seeing them end operations. It just speeds the game up a little bit. And B is cooperating a little bit with the FCP. He is not the owner of the FCP, so not entirely sure. May just be laying track to lay track. And C still doesn't really have too much interesting track to lay, can't lay green track with the miners. FCP will be upgrading and as a result able to token and run out of that city and incorporate a DIT into his run. SPM now operating, and probably we'll see him rush towards Quartero in order to secure that token, which he does, and we'll be buying another 3. So we'll be seeing the privates close very shortly here, or the miners, I should say. TM will lay up to San Antonio and then into Monterey, probably hoping to link up with the MC in Torreon, and hopefully we'll be buying that last 3, or the fifth 3. So the miners have closed, and the players who own them have gotten shares, notably the NDM shares, the company that could eventually absorb another company, gives a half share to Flin-Flon and HGL. This is important because it could be key in determining presidency, and it also does not count against their share limit. So just a free half share. Chihuahua now operating, and will upgrade Torreon and probably token there, so blocking the TM out. And we'll buy the last 3. We will probably be seeing the 4s rust, or the 2s rust with the purchase of the 4 from either the MEX or the MC. The MC does have a 3 train, so the MEX is not, super motivated to rust it, but it would hurt the MC a fair amount. Max is upgrading the Mexico City tile into green and does have the opportunity to place a token on it, and does so. We'll be running 2 trains and actually withholds in order to rust the 2 trains. MC now does have a 3 train, a little bit sad to have lost the opportunity to run its 2s, but will be upgrading Zacatecas, hoping to get into multiple runs out of Mexico City potentially. And does not have the money to buy a 4, but will pay out as the Bad Company player controls about 90% of this company's revenue. The miners are gone, so we just jump into player-owned companies, and FCP will be looking to basically bypass Torreon and potentially Querétaro and getting into Guadalajara or through another track to head towards Mexico City. Does buy a 3 train, so we'll be running two trains for some time now. And the TM now has been tokened out of Torreon, so needs to adjust its strategy. May have a hard time getting in to Mexico City other than through the south, but there is some expensive terrain to get in that way. Looks like he's happy to link up Torreon anyways, and will just be running his train. Does not buy a 4, as that is the last barrier between the 5s. Doesn't want to open that up for the other companies. SPM will be looking to head west and potentially open up a path for another company to get into Mexico or Mexico City. So a little bit curious why he is opening up these opportunities for other companies. He owns the SPM and the MC, which is really nice synergy, and he controls Querétaro. So I would be more fond of him kind of trying to lock down this map and prevent other companies from getting easy access to Mexico City. He's also not expecting to be running the NDM, as he is not the president of that company. Chihuahua will be upgrading these DITs in an effort to open up more paths into Mexico City and running his single train. He does buy the last 4. Oh, sorry, he shuffles a 4 over from his other company. He does lose a run out of doing that, but maybe looking to just withhold with the mechs and keep it yellow. It is difficult to run a yellow strategy in this game, as it is quite a shallow market, so just floating up once puts you in danger of operating out of it. So if he sells down the mechs here, he will be quite close to the yellow zone of the market. MC completes that loop that he's been trying to make, and will be running his 3 train. Unable to afford, even with a hold, a 5 train. And the mechs now will operate and is just going to upgrade its home tile and then run its 3 train. He does lay Copper Canyon for the Chihuahua. This leaves the potential for the Chihuahua to start running west into some higher revenue centers like Baja California, but mostly just laying the tile to lay it. Next stock round, HGL still has priority. The NDM is now available to buy as the 3 trains have been bought, and we will see if he tries to take advantage of that. He sells down the mechs and is buying more revenue producing shares with the FCP. And the FCP continues to sell. Bad company will buy an FCP. Will we see someone trashing these shares just for a little extra money? Looks like he is happy to buy another share at a discount. And Trath has very little money left, is forced to buy the Chihuahua. When I say forced, it's really not a bad share to buy. The company has 2 trains and good track. Flin Flon selling an FCP, so just took a little bit of money from the IPO and will be parring the UDY. UDY has a very late start in many games, including this one, and as a result will oftentimes struggle to get good tokens and good track starting all the way here in the south. TM almost sold out, but all the players are passing. So HGL somehow manages to maintain priority here. This is probably like the 3rd stock round in a row he's had this. FCP is upgrading track in an effort to get around the west side into Mexico City, and will be running his 2 trains, paying out. The TM has kind of limited options at this point in order to get into more high-value revenue centers, and he does upgrade Tampico, maybe looking to get in from the south. Nobody's buying this 4 train yet. Everyone's just kind of waiting for someone else to blink first. SPM upgrades Mazdaland and probably will token there to block the FCP. It does. Chihuahua still running 2 trains, may head up to Juarez. Instead is just upgrading to take advantage of the track laid by the FCP in the past. Mex has pretty limited track, will be helping the TM get into Mexico City and withholding. So he only owns 20% of that company and is probably looking to get it down into the yellow in the near future. He's going to need someone to sell a share in order to do that, unless he withholds twice more, which he won't be able to do in this set of operating rounds. MC is in the yellow zone, and Bad Company controls 90% of its revenue, so we'll be expecting it to pay out here. And we'll be upgrading Guadalajara. This does open up a location for a token from Chihuahua. MC is out of tokens. SBM already has a token there, so curious that he is kind of helping Chihuahua get down there. Does help his revenue. Well, it doesn't even help his revenue. He's not running that tile. FCP operating again. May see an upgrade of Chihuahua here, and that way he can run through that and hit some higher value cities. Nobody seems to be interested in buying this final 4 train. They are going to wait for another company to float, which may be the UDY, to start pushing these trains through. Could also be the NDM. SPM will link the TM down south and just pays it out. Chihuahua is still operating 2 trains. Fortunately for him, the link into the Guadalajara track didn't occur until after TM operated, so he will be able to secure that token if he values it, and he does. It's funny that he is laying a gentle on that track, as it will allow companies to eventually bypass both Guadalajara and Querétaro. He may be thinking ahead to the NDM, as he is the president of that company, and just trying to make sure it has a run out of Mexico City. MC looks like he's not laying any track, just running his train, and he does withhold it in order to stay yellow. So it has a fair amount of company cash in that company now. Final operation is from the MEX and doesn't have interesting track, so we'll just pay out. Oh, sorry, it withholds. He is still trying to get into the yellow zone. He did shuffle a train from the Chihuahua, and as a result, we'll have close to enough money for a 4 and a 5 if he's given that opportunity. This also makes the MEX less attractive of a company, potentially opening it up for a dump if anybody chooses to buy more shares. He is buying a share of the MC, which is a yellow company, so just looking to the future when he will be rubbing against the cert limit. He also sells down a TM. The TM hasn't been running too well. It only has 1 train and has been tokened out of Mexico City. Drath is happy to pick up the cheap share that was sold, and Flin has quite a limited cash here. He's probably hoping to float the UDY to get an influx of money and hopefully push some trains to change up the game state, but has pretty limited options in terms of doing that. Doesn't really have enough for 2 shares. He may have to sell down a TM, but that's a little risky. It would put 2 shares on the market, and potentially Drath could pick them up and take the presidency. Bad company buys yellow shares. HGL is happy to follow, and Drath will start buying the NDM. So it looks like players are eager to start seeing some new trains bought, and they're going to force the issue on the NDM. Bad company is continuing to buy his yellow shares. HGL in no danger of losing the presidency this round in the stock round, but may need to keep an eye on that. He buys the last yellow share. That does mean that the company will be floating right out of the yellows, which is what I mentioned before, kind of hard to keep your companies in the yellow in this very shallow market. Drath, will he continue to buy NDM? It looks like it. So now he, with 1 more share purchase, will take the presidency from HGL if HGL doesn't defend. The company has floated. Flin this player doesn't have that much cash. Bad company still has money to buy shares and will buy an NDM along with Drath. So HGL is going to be forced to buy an NDM here if he wants to keep control of the company. And he does. Drath is continuing to press the issue. There's only 1 more share on the market, or in the IPO, and bad company can take it, or HGL can assure his presidency by taking it. that company is going to force HGL to defend his company. And HGL says, Drath, you know what? If you want to sell down to take this company, be my guest. So we will see if that happens. Drath passes. And then HGL continues to buy SPM shares. And he actually, this is where the game starts to become funny, dumps the NDM. So he's saying that Drath wasn't willing to take it from him, but sure, I'll just give it away. And there's a couple of reasons why you would want to do this. One is that it gives you the option of merging your company into the NDM. So for instance, he has the MEX here where he only owns 2 shares of it, has non-permanent trains, doesn't have very much company money, does have a good token, but he may be looking towards the NDM to get rid of this company as the permanent trains and rusting events start approaching. So Drath is now the president of the NDM. And HGL is happy to continue to buy SPM shares. This does mean that HGL will surrender priority into the next stock round, and he is going to be behind Drath, importantly, in operating. FCP will be just laying some track and then running his 2 trains, no motivation to buy that 4 train. TM is passing his track and will similarly just be running his train and paying out. The SPM is working on creating a pathway into Mexico City from the south, or basically bypassing Guadalajara and Querétaro, which again to me is interesting because he controls both of those companies, the MC and the SPM, and has laid tokens to block companies, so it's curious that he is opening up a pathway around this for the other players. Not to say it wouldn't happen eventually, but why spend your track points on helping them do something that you've prevented with your tokens? Chihuahua now operating only one company or only one train as a result of consolidating his cash and buying his trains into the max. He will finally link up with Juarez and just run his train and pay out. He does have a good amount of money in this company and buys the 4 back over. First operation from the NDM, so we will probably see that last 4 in the first 5 being purchased. Buys the 4 and the first 5. So now the unique feature of this game is this merger event, and HGL was pretty clever in the last operating round in terms of dumping the presidency, because now if we look through the companies, we will see that he is able to merge his mechs in, and the other players are not in a position to do a merge. The merge also will give him this trade-in share, which will give him the presidency of the NDM back, which I thought was pretty clever. SPM has a lot of money into it. That company is not motivated to merge that company. Let's just go through it this way. So the NDM was the company that bought the 5. So moving to the left of him, or just basically in priority order, all the players have an opportunity to merge their companies. Flin Flon, the TM, I believe, is a company that cannot merge with the NDM. The other company that's like that is the FCP, but it's also owned by Drath, who's the president, so he couldn't have merged anyways. UDY is not floated, so it goes last in terms of opportunities to merge. SPM is not in a position to merge and has too much money and too good of track and tokens. MC is the same, so this leaves HGL the opportunity to merge his mechs because none of the other players are going to take advantage of this. So nice planning from HGL. And here we see the merge. This does cause the Mexico token to leave Mexico City, but generally speaking, in this game, just running to Mexico City is probably going to be enough. You don't necessarily need to run through it. So in my experience, the tokens surrounding Mexico City, specifically Querétaro, oftentimes are a little more important than the tokens in Mexico City itself. MC now able to operate and potentially buy the next 5 train. and it looks like he passes. The 5 train was available, and the MC does have the cash for it, so he is looking for a 6 train potentially. Otherwise, I can't explain passing on that. FCP has access to brown now, but is just going to lay a gentle curve and will be paying out on both his trains. TM is looking to probably get into Mexico City. Could upgrade that in token. Mexico City has 2 options in brown, one with 4 slots and one with 3. So the maybe looking to lay that 3-slot token and just drop a 3-slot tile and drop a token there. This does leave an opening for the Chihuahua to get a token in there too. SPM is out of tokens. And the TM did buy the last 5. This means that the SPM has the opportunity to buy the first 6. And it looks like he neglected to do that. So this player has passed up 2 of the cheaper permanent trains. He must be angling for the 4D, which granted is a very strong train, but he is giving other players extra runs of their trains in order to do it. Chihuahua will upgrade its home tile and probably will be paying out here. NDM has an extra train as a special ability, so able to run 3 trains into the brown phase, and looks like he will be linking the East Coast into Mexico City and immediately toking Matamoros to keep the other companies out of the South. And he must have played that token before and I missed it. He actually tokens in Tampico to keep even the TM from running through that east side of the map. And does the MC finally buy a 6 train here? He is going to shuffle trains and get all of his money into the SPM. That's too much money to dump the company, of course. But he now has $0 in the MC and maybe looking to dump that company on HGL. The HGL, or the MC, will not be in yellow either, so this is actually a pretty nice opportunity to dump. The part where I really started laughing was after all of HGL's hard work to assume the presidency of the NDM through the merger, Drath manages to get the leg up on him in priority deal and is able to take the NDM right back. So we've seen this company change ownership twice now, which I think is great. Flinflon just floating his UDY. Bad company, we will see a dump here, and HGL is now the proud owner of the MC. And he also secures the NDM share, preventing HGL from taking the presidency back. HGL sells out of the NDM, which is an interesting decision because the NDM is typically quite a valuable share to have. The company, I should say, can run an extra train and is able to run out of Mexico City quite well. In this particular game, the company also has some good tokens, allowing it to run along the east side of the map, and will be able to run in 2 directions at least out of Mexico City. So, curious decision on his part. He will continue to invest in the SPM. The SPM has a ton of cash, obviously, will be well positioned to buy some very expensive trains and has good map position to take advantage of them. So not at all unreasonable to be investing in the SPM, even though it has no train currently. Drath will buy the NDM that HGL has sold down, and so will Flinflon. They are recognizing the value of having 1 train above the rest of the companies. The NDM is now sold out, and HGL will continue to buy paying shares. We do have to watch these players' cert limits. Drath is already there, and HGL is rapidly approaching his. There are no yellow companies. Bad Company will be approaching his cert limit as well, and now HGL is capped. He is just shuffling his portfolio a little bit, selling out of the TM. Will be looking for a share he values more. Bad Company now capped, and HGL could pass here to maintain priority. He doesn't have a good candidate to dump. He probably wants to maintain the Chihuahua. It has good map position, but does have to give some thought to the idea of staying one share away from his cert limit in order to maintain priority here. And it looks like he's happy to give it away. And we'll leave the stock round going last in priority as a result. FCP doesn't have money and is train locked, so not going to be able to bring out a 6 train, but SPM is operating second and has enough cash for both 6s or a 6 and then later a 4D. So we will not see the 3 trains running for very much longer. FCP access to brown shares, but continuing to just lay upgrades in order to improve his run and get access to Mexico City. Could drop a token on Monterey to make sure it isn't tokened out there, and does. SPM, again, trainless, so we'll be falling back, but we'll be buying a train very shortly. He lays the N9 tile, so again, just helping other companies get into Mexico City. He controls both Querétaro and Guadalajara. I'm not entirely sure why he has continued to lay track that allows other companies easy access. Yeah, I guess the track was already there, so he's just giving the SPM another route into Mexico City. Makes more sense in that light. We'll see him buy his first 6, and then he has the option of buying a second 6, but we'll pass and hope for that 4D. In terms of status, so the UDY is looking for the D, or the 6 train, and then the MC is going to be forced to buy a train from the bank because it has $0, which is the result of a nasty dump from Bad Company. So Bad Company knows that this 6 train is being bought by someone else and is secure in the idea of buying a 4D. Chihuahua now has $700, probably is not looking to buy the 6. Well, actually maybe buying the 6 here, and then yeah, he's just in a rough situation because the MC has no money. So even if he buys the 6 here, the MC is still going to have to out-of-pocket a train. So he may just hold this money for 4D after the 6 has been bought by the UDY. And he is actually withholding. I don't know why you withhold there necessarily. You know that you're paying out-of-pocket for this train no matter what you do with this company. You already have money for a 4D in the company, and you have no reason to withhold. UDY, first operation, will be laying track into Oaxaca, but unfortunately has, very limited options based on how the tiles and tokens have come out to date. But we'll be buying the second 6, and the second 6 soft rests the 4s, so they will all have one more run, which is unfortunate for the NDM, who was operating after UDY, and as a result will only get a single run of his 4 rather than 2. NDM getting a second route into Tampico and running 2 trains. He will withhold and buy the first 4D. And the MC will have the painful experience of out-of-pocketing $700 for a 4D. So all the 4 trains will be rusting. Now, at this point in the game, I was thinking to myself, there is a novel end condition in 18 mechs, where if a company gets into this blue spot, the game ends at the end of the OR. So if I'm running the FCP here, I'm thinking to myself, there are 2 operations left. I can pay out and pay out, and then potentially float up, or just pay out once and end the game in OR 9.1, basically without any say from the other players. So this is Draft that we're talking about. He is in the lead. He is running a company with 2 permanent trains and has a very high revenue potential. He did withhold to do that, but will not need to withhold for the next 2 operating rounds. He should be able to leave this operating round with a comfortable lead and then end the game in the operating round to follow. So does he withhold here, or does he just pay out? He will only have to buy a 4D with, he's going to get $68 more here. He would be paying out, barely $100 out of pocket for this company or this train, and he will get the one step closer to ending the game. So that would be my thinking going into this. I think that he would assure himself a win by doing this. But he actually elects to withhold, which puts him out of reach of this tile and will potentially extend the game. So this was another part of the game which I thought was funny and just chaos throughout the late stages of this game. It only gets worse from here. He buys the 4D, and now TM will be operating. This company does have a token in Mexico City and some reasonable track, but has a less lucrative or less valuable permanent train. He is going to work on getting to the south into Mexico City from the south, potentially laying some track to help the UDY, his other company. SPM just running a 6 train. HDL and Bad Company are almost equally invested in this. So Bad Company only has a net of 20% on HDL, but will be looking for the 4D. Does have 2 runs out of Mexico City, which will lead it to be running for quite a lot once it has both trains up and running. Now the Chihuahua has a huge amount in its treasury and will be able to afford a 4D as a result, and he will find himself in the position of running 2 4Ds. So a lot of these trains are being bought. In fact, there's only 3 left in the market. UDY sitting on a 6 train. 6 trains are a little bit worse than 4Ds, so a company that has very limited track and not the best train. We'll be able to get up to the north through that west coast corridor and maybe leaving a token somewhere just to be annoying to other companies. But this player, unfortunately, does not have the best prospects moving forward into this game. He does token, and he tokens all the way out here in Los Smokies. I don't know that that's the most impactful token. You may want to look into getting to Monterey, for instance, as opposed to Mochis. NDM now running 2 permanent trains and will be paying out for a lot, but this is where I'm talking about it becoming chaotic. He actually, instead of rushing to end the game, will withhold here and buy a second 4D train. So yes, he's going to be running for tons of cash, but I think he would have just won outright if he had paid out with his companies and rushed into that blue square on the market. So this was very strange decision making to me. So there is, I believe, 1 4D left, and the MC will just be running his train and also withholds, trying to get that last 4D, which is crazy. Drath now in a position where he can no longer end the game very quickly and will have to rely on the bank breaking, which with such high runs may very well happen in the next set of ORs. And he will decide to pay out. TM, again, not really within range of a 4D, and we'll just be paying out here. SPM now has 2 trains, but again is only 20% ahead of HGL, so not the most valuable company for Bad Company despite his dump, and is able to run 2 trains out of Mexico City for 710. The Chihuahua now has a 4D train and a run into Mexico City, and will be running for a large amount of money and paying it out. UDY, again, just running the 6 train, but does have an opportunity to get north now. Unfortunately, out of tokens and kind of threw his way in Los Mochis. NDM running 3 trains is going to have an absolutely monster run, but had to withhold a little bit too much in order to get there. So he is running for 1090, which is one of the highest runs I've ever seen. Granted, I don't play very much 18 mechs, but seems pretty absurd. HGL has shuffled trains and will be buying the last 4D into the MC, so he will be running 3 4D trains between 2 companies. This brings us into the last stock round. So this is actually a very close game at this point, to some extent because of the decisions that players have made to withhold instead of just running towards the finish line. Most of the players are at their cert limit. Flit and Flan is basically eliminated from the game. It really comes down to between Bad Company and HGL. So we will look at the decision making for these 2 players as they are within $100 of each other and are at their cert limits. So Drath is not able to buy shares here without selling down, and he elects to sell down the MC, which is a good company. It's going to run for a lot with this 4D train. It has a run into Mexico City. Quatero can hit these dits and then head up to Torreon and hit the Chihuahua tile and also this Copper Canyon. So it's going to be running for a good amount of money. You could do the math there and figure out exactly what it is. And then he elects to buy the TM. The TM is running a 5 train, which is, much less valuable than a 4D, and it does have more stock appreciation potential in terms of, moving up in the market. It's going to be running up for 15. It'll also have a free float if nobody else sells, or if he's able to maintain it sold out. So its stock is appreciating by 15 as opposed to 5, but I think we will see that the revenue of the MC is more than enough to make it the better share. But that's all kind of irrelevant. What he has done here is given his closest competitors the ability to buy more shares and exceed their cert limit. So just very bad idea to do that. You are now, locked out of the yellow shares and given your close competitors the ability to buy above the cert limit, which is exactly what will happen. So Flin Flon is out of the game, kind of irrelevant, but not irrelevant in the sense that he does not buy a yellow share, which is important because these other players are going to snap these up. So Bad Company is paying attention, buys the MC, and I believe HGL will also do that. Drath is locked out, can't buy any more shares, and we will see the other players overtake him in share density as a result. And they are happy to snap up all these MC shares. Flin Flon finally wakes up and decides to join the party on the MC, and there are no more shares available to buy, so the rest of the players will pass. Oh, sorry. There are UDY shares. And even though the UDY is not the most important company, it is better than nothing, which is what Drath is getting. So from being tied in shares, Drath is now 3 shares behind Bad Company, who is also only $40 behind him in net worth. The other 2 players are far enough behind that we're not too worried about them. And then if we look at the market, there's only $2,000 in it. So we are expecting the bank to break, even though he has withheld and the TM and FCP are not going to reach this blue market tile. So we will just buzz through this operating round, as the track is not too important at this point. The SPM is Bad Company's primary company, and he will be running for a ton of money, $740. Of course, he pays that out as his competitor Drath doesn't own a single share in that company, and the Chihuahua is also going to run for a ton, but Drath and Bad Company are tied there, so there's no net difference in their personal wealth as a result of this run. UDY, as a result of Drath selling down into the yellow, Bad Company was able to invest in this company and get some extra leg up on Drath. And now the NDM is going to run for a monster 1,000 plus and break the bank. And the bank is now broken, and the game is going to end after this run. So at the end of everything, Bad Company barely takes the win over Drath and is able to, lock this one down. And it all comes down to basically Drath's decision to, one, withhold on the NDM and the FCP instead of just race to the end with his trains, and then two, and possibly more importantly, his decision to sell down the MC. So just an extremely chaotic game, one that was cracking me up. I realize that doesn't come through in the commentary now, as it's not a surprise, but when I was watching this game, I was just flabbergasted by some of the way this turned out. And then, of course, going back to the NDM merger and watching the presidency just flip around between two players was a lot of fun. So I'm not a fan of 18 Mechs as a game. I don't play it very often, and that may show in my analysis. I'm sure I missed things and maybe said things that were wrong, but I did really enjoy this game in particular. So we will look to bring some more 18 Mechs into the channel in the future as games become available. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back in the future.